I'm Dylan.
And I'm Keon.
And this is Inevitable, that podcast where you can listen to 6 years of our lives in 2 weeks, because this week we watched The General.
Written by Louis Greifer, or maybe it's Griefer, under the pseudonym Joshua Adam.
Directed by Peter Graham Scott.
And aired on November 3rd, 1967.
Yeah, I guess we should explain the intro. Or we could just not. We could just not. Well, we've been
podcasting for like 6 years.
Literally a quarter of my life.
Obviously, yeah. Quarter of our lives. And not on this podcast, obviously, but on our Doctor Who podcast, Trust Your Doctor. And you can listen to all of our content in like 2 weeks.
If you listen to it back to back and didn't sleep.
Yeah, exactly. So it would take longer, but we've recorded like 2 weeks worth of stuff. And I don't know about Dylan. I'm not going to speak for anyone but myself here, but like this is basically the biggest thing I've done in life. So, kind of just hits home the fact that like 6 years worth are able to be condensed down into like that short amount of time.
I mean, this is definitely the top 5 biggest things I've ever done. I mean, I've got a published paper, so I'm probably going to have to say that's bigger than this. Since I'm just going to guess more people have probably read that than listened to our podcast on a weekly basis.
Yeah. Oh, maybe I should count my my published Frankenstein fanfic. Published, quote unquote, by like a local zine.
Wow, I didn't even know about that.
You didn't? I told you about it. I've at least told you about it once.
Well, maybe you didn't, and I just forgot. I've been forgetting a lot of things in quarantine, so maybe I just forgot.
Like what the outside air tastes like.
Yeah,
what sunshine feels like on your skin.
What food that isn't rice tastes like.
What it feels like to get a haircut.
What it feels like to talk to another human being in person. What it even feels like to encounter another human being. How to drive an automatic car. Who knows?
Just how to drive.
How to drive.
How to put gas in the car.
What side of the road do we drive on here?
Yeah. I wonder how many people who who like very soon are going to like, maybe get in their car and realize the battery's completely dead.
Yeah, that's my roommate went home. He's like, okay, I'm leaving you my car keys. Can you just like drive my car around the block like once a week? And I'm like, all right, sure.
Yeah.
And that's to prevent the battery from going dead, so.
Yeah. Anyway, speaking of driving, this episode actually begins with some helicopter driving / flying. I don't know if you had any.
I've got some production stuff.
All right. Well, hey, I didn't this week. I didn't have anything.
Well, first, while looking for production stuff, I found this hour-and-a-half long The Prisoner behind the scenes documentary that features interviews of a lot of people who were involved in the show. And it looks like it was made like maybe in the 80s. I don't really know. And I didn't watch it, just in case there were some spoilers, but I will watch it before the end of the show because my mystical book has not arrived. And Amazon sent me a thing this week. It was like, so rate your transaction. And I'm like, I really want to just fill it in and say, like, this never arrived.
One time I ordered
it was supposed
something.
to arrive by the 9th of July. It is currently the 19th of July. Anyway, so this documentary is really interesting. I watched the first 30 seconds of it because it autoplayed. Lol. And it opens with this quote. And the quote, it's from Patrick McGoohan, but he's not saying it. It's just attributed to him, so take it with a grain of salt. And I mentioned this quote on Trust Your Doctor, I guess what would be 2.5 weeks ago now.
But it was like an hour ago for us.
Yeah, time travel. But basically the quote goes, and I assume it's to justify Patrick McGoohan probably not being in this documentary, but he goes, if whatever we wanted to say is not already contained within the episodes of the series, then I failed in the production of them, and any amount of chit-chat now will not make good that omission.
Okay.
And I see this quote as just evidence that in some ways he's the anti-PJ Hammond. As I said on Torchwood, PJ Hammond in his interviews always gave the impression of just like, I just wrote Sapphire and Steel, like I just wrote in things I thought were cool, or I thought would be fun to see on screen. And Patrick McGoohan, in this quote that's attributed to him, there are so many like qualifiers on this statement. In this quote, he is in my mind saying like, we definitely wrote every episode with a message in mind. And there was like there was like something critical to every episode that we wrote in.
PJ Hammond didn't like really, he kind of said what you're saying, but it was more along the lines of like, yeah, Sapphire and Steel is kind of like a police show, but mixed with supernatural stuff. So we just wrote that. And, what results is what results. Like, he didn't like say that he wrote stuff in because it was cool and weird. He just like kind of came across as like really nonchalantly and very kind of easily creating this really wacky show that like a lot of people have spent a long time trying to figure out. Whereas to him, it just seemed like so obvious.
That's true. And I am mangling the quote a little bit, or a lot. That's true. So I appreciate you correcting me.
Okay.
But still, it is, in my mind, Patrick McGoohan is definitely, and it is really Patrick McGoohan is writing in and putting in these messages. Also because I found out this week he like not half of the episodes, that's an exaggeration, but a bunch of the episodes that are attributed to not him as director, he basically directed.
Yeah, he's kind of low-key just directing this show and controlling it from the shadows. From the not shadows. But
apparently one of the episodes, not one we've seen yet, he invites someone he knew from Danger Man and had apparently a decent relationship with Danger Man to direct the episode. And then like McGoohan was such a control freak directing the episode that their relationship broke down, and McGoohan ended up directing it in the end and like firing that guy. And it like destroyed their relationship.
Well, yeah. I mean, kind of just getting at in this quote, like, what all artists across all, mediums, formats, whatever, are, like, really doing, right? Which is that you're, creating this for some purpose, or not some purpose, but, like, you're creating for because there's something, within your mind that, like, is expressed through art or whatever, whether you want to admit it or not. But like once it's out in the world, it's out in the world. Like people can think whatever they want about it. And in Patrick McGoohan's opinion, if it's not clear what he had in mind to others who are watching this, then he failed.
Yeah, I somewhat agree with that, but also I somewhat disagree because I think his choice of words in saying not just, if the reason why we created it isn't obvious, he specifically says, if whatever we wanted to say, which I think is a more restrictive form of creating something because you've got something you want to express. Because I think it's more, that's basically just what I have to say. It's more restrictive because you're basically saying, well, I have this message I want to get out and I want the story specifically to say that, as opposed to like, well, I've got this thing in my mind and I want to express it. And, if the story sends this message, that's what I'm trying to send, or maybe I'm not trying to send that message or whatever. Am I making sense?
No. I'm just going to be no, you're not.
I don't know. I guess in my mind, there's just a difference between like expressing something through work and like explicitly trying to push a message through the work. And if you disagree, that's fine. Anyway, I've got a couple other random little production things that are unsourced. So, as usual with this segment, take this with a grain of salt.
Thanks, Midnight Zone, or Midnight Only, or whatever it's called, an Anorak Zone.
I'm actually pulling these ones off Anorak Zone this week.
Oh, man, yeah. What if I guess I combined Anorak Zone and Midnight Only.
Yeah. So Anorak Zone this week mentions that there is an implication behind the scenes, although never stated, that McGowan enjoyed Gordon's performance in ABC and asked him to come back for the general, and then later arranged their opening monologues, because in ABC he just says, I'm number two, and in the general, this week's episode, he says, I'm the new number two. So he arranged those specifically because that was the order, the like chronological order he had in his head. But he only asked Colin Gordon to come back like after seeing him in ABC, which is like, there's nothing more to say except that that's again, it's Anorak Zone is just like, it's an implication, and then it doesn't even cite the implication. It just says it's an implication. And then apparently Louis Greifer, who wrote this, who introduced McGowan and George Markstein, wrote this story because he saw his two sons being bored while doing school homework, and that was where he got the idea for the story. Was what if they could just like do it in 3 seconds or 3 minutes?
Nice. That's a PJ Hammond thing for sure. Of like people like going into all the details, and when he comes out and says the inspiration, it's just like, yeah, I was watching my kids doing some homework. It was like, man, they look bored.
And his pseudonym is apparently there to like given names Joshua and Adam, and that's how he came up with the pseudonym.
Oh, cool.
And then apparently also he wrote into the finale that number two was also going to die in the kind of electrocution scene at the end where the professor and number 12 die, that number two was also going to die. But McGowan apparently asked him to keep number two around, presumably because in McGowan's mind, ABC would come after this and he needs number two to survive for that to make sense.
Right. At the end of this, I do want to go into a little segment, because now having watched these again, I do think the order of A, B, and C, Schizoid Man, and the General is probably the best order to view these in, these three. Mm-hmm. And I put those as like a trio because of, you know, the continuous number two and because of the hint of the General in Schizoid Man. But anyway.
There is like, it's difficult to reconcile the General and the Schizoid Man in terms of that continuity, because specifically of number 12. Because in this episode, number 12's like, I've been around for a while now. You know, like for a couple of years, it's implied. And then like in Schizoid Man, number 12 is like the fake number 6.
But it still has to come before this, because number 6 doesn't know who the General is or what the General is.
Yeah, that's the thing. In terms of the General, it has to come before this because, yeah, like you said, number 6 doesn't know who the General was. But like it would make sense if number 12 got replaced after this episode. So like,
I think that's one of those.
It's interesting.
I think that's one of those weird meta things where it's like there's almost two timelines. There's one timeline for what the like that's in the show, that's diegetic to the show, and there's another timeline that's also kind of at play here. That's in the order that you watch them in broadcast order, which is really odd. And
yeah, maybe there are
cool.
two timelines, and the Schizoid Man is like the collision of the two timelines. It actually takes place like at the end of all of them, and one of them dies. Anyway, that's all I had on the production side, except a small little note that there's no filming in Port Marion for McGowan in this episode, and I actually didn't realize that while watching this until it was pointed out.
Yeah, huh. Yeah, there's, I mean, even with the thing of like, yeah, I was just watching my kids do homework and stuff, I think this episode is actually one of the first that really hints at something that the prisoner is going to very heavily touch on. There's a quote from McGowan that also touches on this where, I'm not going to get the exact quote, but I'll put it in the notes, where he goes like, yeah, I basically think the worst thing in the world is like technology and progress.
So he was basically a Luddite.
Yeah, I mean, there is like a sort of Amish element to the Prisoner of like, hey, all this stuff is like really, really, really bad. Cool, but bad. And yeah, just...
That's like really interesting because a lot of the episodes so far have, even though maybe they haven't extracted the information they've wanted to from number 6, the technology still reigns supreme. And I'm specifically thinking of what was the the one with the craft fair?
The Chimes of Big Ben?
Yeah, the Chimes of Big Ben. Where he, like, you would think that'd be the episode where he could really say, like, technology is bad because this primitive boat he carves with hand tools and a rock
Yeah, you're right.
is, like, the most primitive you can get. But then he gets beaten by, like, a facsimile of the secret agent office, I guess, where he worked. And I guess you could make the argument that, like, you know, the Chimes of Big Ben is some technological thing that gives it away, but the fact still remains that this really primitive form of escape gets beaten by technology.
Yeah, doesn't stand a chance. So that's something I think we'll probably talk about this a little more. I know I keep hyping this up and referencing it, but in episode 8, which is again...
You really are hyping this up like every week, which is just honestly going to make me more and more disappointed when I watch it.
Yeah, probably. And it's also it's technology for sure, but I think something he gets at in the quote, which again I'll have put the actual quote in the show notes a few minutes ago when we first brought it up, but like it's also speed. So like not necessarily even advanced technology, but like the speed of the advance of technology.
Mm-hmm. Well, wow. I had it and it completely went away, but there is a name for the fact that like technology will double in speed every...
What?
Now I can't remember the exact number because it's actually even sped up from the original formulation of this quote law unquote, that the pace of technology, like the speed of computers, doubles every 5 years or 10 years.
Yeah, I know what you're talking about. I'll put it in the show notes if you can't remember it. And yeah, we were talking about this, I don't know whether it was last week or a few weeks ago at least, but like think of when this was made. This is like the 60s. And, you know, we were talking about it in terms of helicopters. So actually I went and looked up when helicopters were invented, and it was the 20s. And like...
Yeah, it was pretty soon after the airplane.
Yeah, these are like really, like a lot of the stuff that they're using in this show is like really new. Like the big computer, the helicopters, which this episode starts with, automatic doors, even stuff you don't even think about when watching now because it's so commonplace.
But on the other hand, the like hilariously, confusingly outdated method by which the machine just accepts the coins, which is to like open a little hand and the hand takes it, and it's like, what is this?
Even that's about technology because that's an example. I looked this up on Wikipedia. Those boxes are an example of like, I forget what the actual name is, but it's like a machine that has a function but no purpose. So like
for some reason, I'm imagining it's called the frustration machine, but
yeah, I don't know, but like
I don't think that's the name.
Yeah, so the function of this machine is to grab the little coin, but there's no like, and they're obviously using it as a sort of toll booth thing, but like there's really no purpose to that machine in and of itself, you know. It just does a thing that you can kind of apply anywhere. So that even that is kind of part of it. But yeah, it does have like that hilarious like Dr. Seuss like hand come out and grab the coin, which is great. But even so, okay, so since I wanted to talk about this at the end, but since we're on that topic, since we're already on the topic, might as well talk about it now and put the cart before the horse.
I feel like that's the motto of every podcast we ever do. And I wanted to talk about this at the end, but since we're on this now, may as well talk about it now. Just put that on the
put that on my grave.
Yeah, exactly.
But so I really think that this show does a lot of neat things with time in the show itself. Like for example, the outro sequence is it's like a minute or like a minute and a half long, and in that minute span, you construct an entire bike. And which sounds dumb, but like this, in part, this show is definitely about like adopting technology fast and not thinking about what you're doing is bad. And I know it sounds like super simple and dumb, but like even the bike I think is part of that, because you see like this long row of statues extending into the distance, and those have obviously, you know, it's always been like that. You know, these are monuments to the past or whatever, and it's a slow upgrade. They all look pretty much the same, and then all of a sudden, bam, you get a bike, and you build it in like a minute flat. And that's the symbol of the village. So, yeah, I don't know.
So what you're saying is the village is saying we should go back to penny farthing bicycles.
Sure. If that's what you want to get out of it, why not? Patrick McGowan did fail. Confirmed. I'm just kidding.
No, but there is an element of that, because even the representation of, quote, technology, unquote, is this already outdated mode of transportation. Exactly. Is that even by the 60s, like the penny farthing bicycle was outdated as a bicycle concept.
Yeah, so I mean, when you consider that with like with the boat and stuff, and like it was kind of always like that. Even the most primitive versions of technology, like a handmade boat or like a stick strapped to a rock that you use to chop down a tree, like even that was part of this long continuum of like things winding up with, you know, nuclear weapons and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Wow.
Mind blown. All right, so my first note for this episode is I still laugh every time he has to signal with his hand.
What do you mean?
Just for the intro sequence where he's driving and he has to signal with his hand because his car like doesn't have indicators, I guess.
Yeah, maybe technology isn't so bad after all. You think of that? I'm just kidding.
Yeah, you think about that, Patrick? You think about what would happen if a car just drove by and like took your hand off? You think about that, Patrick?
Well, the intro's still great. I would never skip an intro because I'm that OCD about completing shows. But if I did skip intros, I probably still would not skip this one.
So you wouldn't, if Netflix popped up with a little skip intro option, you wouldn't be like, nope, I'm out.
Hell no.
That's actually like something I noticed is that these, you know, a lot of the shows we've watched for our podcasts have been from the 60s or the 70s or the 80s, right? And they've all had pretty lengthy intros. Mm-hmm. And part of that is because, you know, you have to make less television per week if you've got a really short intro. But that kind of like really fell out of fashion come like the turn of the century when people were like trying to cram more content in per week. So the intros got really short. But then like I was just thinking it's kind of weird on the technology front how streaming has brought us kind of back around, because shows that release on streaming services now tend to once again have pretty long intros because you're no longer restricted by like a time slot. You can make the episode as long or as short as you want. So that's given a lot of creators more freedom to put in these really long intro title sequences that are like a minute, 2 minutes long.
Mm-hmm.
That kind of fell out of fashion with the increasing pace of television. So that's kind of weird to think about how technology has actually almost brought us like back around to these long intros.
Yeah, formats are definitely changing. To kind of connect that to The Prisoner, one big thing, like The Prisoner pretty heavily responds to like Danger Man and the sort of, I think, like cookie cutter format of those spy shows like Danger Man and whatchamacallit, William Tell and stuff like that.
Mm-hmm.
But in a way, it's like the technology, like you said, brought us back around to having even more freedom. Because back then it was like, yeah, the more technology advances, the more like these shows are going to be the same because you need to make a profit from these TV shows. And yeah, but like now it's kind of brought us back the other way.
Yeah, the kind of pendulum swings both ways. It is. I mean, it is kind of like the double-edged sword metaphor is so played out, but it is kind of like a double-edged sword, right? Like it'll take you one way, but it'll take you back the other way. It can go both ways, really.
Yeah, take that, McGowan. You failed. You failed.
I don't know why are we ragging on McGowan so much in this episode. I know I've been jokingly ragging on him for the past couple of weeks, but I do think he's been doing a lot of interesting stuff with the television show, and I've mostly been ragging on him just for the hilarity value. But why are we ragging on him so much this
I don't
week?
know. Just because it's funny. Just because he, like, pretty much behind the scenes had, like, a vast amount of control over this show and was known to be kind of a dick about it. So it's kind of funny to just, even though the show is great and probably wouldn't have been if he didn't have that amount of control, like, it's just funny.
Yeah, I mean, he is kind of like the proof that like studios should just let these auteurs do what they want, right? That we've kind of seen coming around again with like movies when studios, and that's such a weird thing to think about in Hollywood, is that Hollywood started with the studio system where studios made movies and directors like were at the whim of the studio, and it wasn't until, you know, the kind of 40s, 50s, 60s with the collapse of the studio system and the rise of people like Alfred Hitchcock, where the auteur director became kind of a thing. And then at the turn of the century, we went back to studio movies, and now we're back to like the auteur again. Like we've gone through this whole cycle twice now in like movie making. It's just wild to think about. So anyway, let's get to the episode. Let's get to the episode.
There's a helicopter flying around the village, and number 6 is looking at it skeptically.
Yeah, he's like, damn, you know, I've tried to escape on that helicopter twice now, and it just hasn't worked. But one day...
He just sees, like, some people escaping and succeeding. He's like, oh, man.
Oh, man, the one time.
God.
He sees these people escaping, and there's like off screen right before this episode started, they're like, hey, number 6, do you want to escape in the helicopter with us? He's like, no, I've tried that. It never works. And he just watches them escape, and he's like, damn.
Wow. Man. We should reboot The Prisoner and make it a comedy.
Honestly, like, I think you're joking, but also you could do a lot of really interesting stuff if you made it, like, maybe not as overtly comedic, but maybe just kind of like a lot of sight gags like that. You could do a lot of interesting stuff with it.
Prisoner sitcom. Yeah, you could have a lot of, like, this show definitely could have a lot more humor, I think.
But even like if you did it as a sitcom, you could definitely do like a Truman Show thing where you like commentate on the people surveilling number 6 through the medium of the television show. Like it could be a sitcom, but it could also like say something about that.
Well, too meta for me.
Too meta for Patrick McGowan. Hey.
Anyway, a lecture starts. There's this announcement over a speaker about a lecture starting and how everyone needs to report to the lecture halls or whatever.
Yeah, so I kind of thought people were wearing, like, they looked like the campaign badges from Free For All. Except instead of having a number in the middle, they have, like, the professor's face.
Right, because the professor doesn't have a number. He just has a name. It's Professor. Which
is interesting. And, yeah, so the prisoner predicted Zoom University.
Is that a real thing? Zoom?
No, it's just a joke everybody makes because everybody's classes for the last quarter/semester were taught over Zoom, thanks to the virus.
Yeah, thankfully I'm out of school, so I don't really encounter those.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You should be glad.
I am glad. I'm very glad.
Because it sucks.
But some waiter asks number 6 if he's going to go to the lecture, and number 6 just doesn't even know about this. So it just goes to show you how much of, like, again, a Luddite number 6 / McGowan is, where he's not up on the latest trends and doesn't even know about this.
Apparently coffee costs 2 work units. Doesn't really seem like number 6 has a job. So I kind of wonder where he's getting all these work units.
Yeah. No, his job is to be that guy who escapes all the time, or tries to escape all the time.
Oh, that's true. You're right. I was going to say the only time we've seen him get work units, he immediately gave them all away to buy a tapestry to use as a sail for his boat.
And then that boat subsequently earned him double or more the amount of work units he spent to build it, because escaping and trying to escape and failing is his job.
There is a line in this episode where someone asks him if he's a spy, and he dodges the question, which in my mind just reinforces the fact that maybe he isn't a spy and he's just trying to keep up the facade because he's in too deep now.
Yeah, but what's really the difference? If everyone thinks you're a spy, then what's the difference between that and actually being one,
Well, because if everybody thinks you're a spy, you're a pretty damn bad spy.
Yeah, it's true.
That's the difference.
But maybe that's just to throw people off, Like, maybe he is actually a spy, and everyone thinks he is, and he's putting up a fake facade to throw people off the trail.
Too deep for me.
And have them be in on the joke that he is a spy and thinking that he is, but is actually just some random barber. But he actually is.
Yeah, that's way too deep for me. Yeah, but I don't either. As soon as you said maybe everyone thinking he is the spy is the facade, I was like, all right, this is going to be a wild ride. And I just held on until the end. So 6 decides to go for a walk on the beach while the cart people chase him, I guess.
And okay, so there's like another unrelated like escape attempt going on at the same time, right?
Yes.
It's just like some guy is just making a break for it, and dozens are chasing him.
I kind of feel like it's what I feel like retroactively this is supposed to be the professor, because he like loses his tape recorder on the beach and then number 6 finds it.
I'm pretty sure it is, because he's also wearing that like red velvet coat thing that the professor wears.
And that's why that would explain why they're like concerned that number 6 is out there, not only because he could find the tape recorder, because like, he's seeing the fact that like the professor is working against his will.
Yeah. But that's what number 6 does right now. He finds the little tape recorder, but then he has to hide it really quick underneath the sand.
Just by sheer chance, I might add.
Yeah.
So 6 goes home and decides to tune in and see what this whole 3-part history course is all about.
We get a very enthusiastic announcer introducing the professor and Madam Professor.
Yeah, his wife.
Yeah, so
romance does exist in the village.
Yeah. Was Professor like their like she's Madam Professor, so is that like their last name? Is it Professor?
Maybe.
What was so weird is that like this actress played another character in another show called like Mrs. Sargent, which is another similar thing.
Huh, weird.
Yeah. Yeah. But anyway, they're like interviewing her, and she's like, yeah, just 3 years and 3 minutes. Anyone can do it. Anyone can learn history.
Yep. I have to wonder, like, they pitched it specifically as a 3-year course in 3 minutes. And I'm like, what 3-year course? Usually when you have a history course, it specializes in something, right? Because the history of the world is like so vast and varied and expansive. So like, but the questions this guy later on, this reporter is asking everyone, and they answer, are like so varied in their topics, from like the Boer War to like King Richard, and it's like, what are they actually learning in this course?
It was Europe from Napoleon on, or something like that. He said it in the announcement. But like, yeah,
I guess I
don't
can
know.
see how the Boer War plays into that. I guess I can see how that plays into that.
Yeah, I mean, I just don't know.
And in the end, does it really matter?
Linkin Park.
2004.
Yeah,
I don't know when that song came out.
probably sometime around then.
It sounds like one of those angsty songs that would come out in the early aughts.
Well, Linkin Park was part of that entire movement. Perhaps at the forefront of it, you could say.
True.
And it was a good movement. We need that style of music back in the limelight.
The great thing about how easy it is to create music now is that there probably are people making that kind of music right now. You just have to find them.
Oh yeah, I'm sure. There's still some post-hardcore bands kicking, people in their 40s reliving the glory days.
Well, I did learn that like the music you listen to as you grow older is heavily influenced and basically very similar to, if not the same as, the music you listen to roughly when you're in between the ages of 12 and 15, because that's like when the part of your brain that kind of controls that is developing most.
Huh. Yeah, that's odd. Wonder what type
And
of...
that's why, like, you know, people who are like in their 50s now are like so heavily into like 80s music, and why like so many 80s things are coming back now is because a lot of the creators who are creating these things are like right at that age where they would have been that age during that era in their late, 40s to 50s.
Makes sense. Wonder what music number 6 listened to.
Didn't we learn in the Schizoid Man?
Did we? I don't remember.
Didn't he have like a record player? And like number 6 made a comment about it.
Oh, huh.
The real number 6.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Wow.
Anyway, number 2 barges into number 6's residence while number 6 is cleaning the tea he spilled. They really should put a disclaimer on this lesson that's like, don't watch this if you're holding something that could be easily dropped, because you're just going to like zone out for 3 minutes. But number 2 barges in. He's like, the professor lost his original notes, because the Madam Professor is on screen. Actually, the reason why she was even part of this broadcast is to explain the professor's like rapidly finishing his notes still because he procrastinated. But number 2 reveals that he actually lost his original notes. And number 2 basically slyly makes number 6 an offer that if anybody found those notes, they would be granted freedom from the village.
Right. And he's also heavily insinuating that number 6 has them by like checking in the closet and doing a bunch of other stuff.
Well, there's a guy with like a radio sniffer with him. So he's not really insinuating. He's like literally checking to see if it's there.
We've already seen this number 6, as we mentioned before, in A, B, and C. But this is taking place before that, so he's a lot more
allegedly
cocky.
Also number 2. You said number 6. You meant number 2.
My bad. Yeah. So he's a lot more cocky.
In my mind, this is still just another reset of the simulation.
Just another glitch in the Matrix.
Yeah, maybe they like keep trying these different attempts because they actually have dozens of, if not hundreds of spies they need to break, but they need to find the perfect instance of the village that'll break their captives, and they're doing it by just running number 6 through it every single week, or day, or hour. Anyway, this is number 12, right? The guy with the sniffer? I think it's number 12.
I'm not sure. I think number 6 originally met number 12 when he hid the radio, or not the radio, when he hid the tape to begin with, right?
I think he actually originally met him right at the start of the episode when number 6 is looking at the poster and number 12 is like, anything, they have this little exchange where number 12 is like, do you think it's impossible? And then number 6 says, nothing is impossible in this place. Or maybe that was backwards, but...
No, I think that's how it played out. And number 12 heavily hints that he has a plan to escape.
Yeah.
So it turns out number 2 actually quizzes number 6 on the speed learn stuff.
Yeah, because number 6 says he didn't go to the lecture, but number 2 is a little doubtful, so he quizzes him on the stuff.
And he gets everything right, and they both start saying the same thing at the same time.
And number 2 is like, don't underestimate yourself. Number 6.
Right. Number 6 then like calls the village operator and takes the quiz again. He's like, oh my god, speed learn really does work.
Man,
So
I wish we had speed learn in real life so I didn't have to do a 6-year degree to get my doctorate. I could just like do it in 6 minutes according to speed learn standards.
But all it is rote memorization.
Yeah.
So I think that was a lot more prevalent in schools back then.
Mm-hmm.
Is like just, not really engaging with the material so much as memorizing it.
Yeah, it's like the joke, the comedian has this bit about new math, which was a movement in the US at this time period. And his joke goes like, you may be, as parents, stuck in the position of not understanding your kid's math. And, as you know, the new method of math isn't to just do the problem. It's to understand what you're doing while you're doing it. So.
Yeah, that seems like right to me. Why is that like part of a comedy bit?
You kind of have to watch the whole bit to get why it's a joke, because the joke isn't the understanding it becomes a joke because he over convolutes the math method as part of the bit.
Huh.
Like, I agree, you should understand what you're doing, but the joke that he's making is that he overcomplicates the math, and then he says, you should understand this, even though the point is that you can't because he overcomplicated it.
Oh, yeah, all right. Yeah, I can see that being funny, I guess.
I'll put it in the show notes.
Yeah, it was also big in the humanities, as we see in this story with like, back then, probably further back in the 60s, I would imagine, but like definitely in like studying history, studying English, literature and such was a lot more like, hey, memorize these dates, or hey, memorize this poem, instead of like actually engaging with what all that stuff kind of means.
Mm-hmm. So number 6 is super suspicious about this, so he decides to go to the like art therapy place, which is actually like the hub for the professor and his teachings.
Yeah, I have no idea like where this is in the village. Like the other facilities, you kind of, maybe it's just me, but like I feel like you can kind of have an idea of where they are in the village.
Yeah, you could definitely build a mental map for yourself.
Yeah,
but I agree. I don't know where this is.
Probably because you're never shown anyone entering or exiting it, so it's just like you see the interior. And that's it.
And that's probably because, again, there's no Port Marion filming for McGowan this week. So they never filmed any scenes of anyone leaving or entering these buildings because there was no reason to, because number 6 was never going to be filmed leaving or entering it.
Yeah. I think so right before this, I'm pretty sure number 6 listens to the tape. And it basically just says like, yeah, speed learn is an abomination. Speed learn is terrible. We need to end speed learn and
destroy the general.
Also, I'm the professor.
Also, I'm the professor. In case you didn't know who I was.
So yeah, number 6 is in this like art class, and he is trying to figure out who the general is, and he thinks it's Madam Professor, because he draws this sketch of her, but she's wearing like a general outfit.
Yeah, this propaganda-esque outfit.
Yeah.
I mean, drawing, sorry.
And she takes great offense to this.
Yeah, I mean, as you would.
Yeah.
They have this really interesting discussion. And these are the only quotes I recorded for this episode, so I guess I'm just going to throw them in here. But she's talking to him. He's basically talking about how everybody there is like not doing anything. And she says, well, on the contrary, they're actually all doing things. And she's like, what do you think that guy over there is doing? And number 6 is like, well, he's tearing up a book. And she says, no, he's creating a fresh concept. and then she says, creation arises out of destruction. And then there's a man who's on his head, and she's like, what do you think he's doing? He's like, well, he's on his head. She's like, no, he's gaining a fresh perspective. The whole conversation was really interesting, but my favorite and most interesting part was the creation arises out of destruction quote, because I think that like actually ties into the ending of this and is going to be part of the reason why I'm actually going to say that this isn't a win for number 6, even though I suspect you might say it is.
Oh yeah, I say it is, but we'll get there, I guess. But yeah, you heard it here first, folks. Palimpsests are the worst thing on the planet, according to the Prisoner. So according to the word of
what, Patrick McGowan?
I guess.
That's like that website that allows you to put quotes from like any Marvel movie in like biblical form, because it'll give you, like you quote the Bible and you say, oh, Genesis 3:19, which is, by the way, dust to dust, ashes to ashes.
Wow.
Which I only know because I looked it up this week, because I was like, I wonder where that quote comes from. And it's like, it's a bastardization of the actual quote in the Bible, but yeah, Genesis 3:19.
Translation to million, like it's like the Bible, like reading the Bible in modern English is like putting something in Google Translate and filtering it through every language.
And also, like, there's so many interpretations done. There's like a Shakespeare reference that was inserted into the King James Bible.
Yeah.
That's like not even there originally, but the way they had to like twist the words to make it fit is like so weird. Because like if you go like an X amount of words down from the top of the verse and X amount of words up from the bottom, if you go down from the top you get the word shake, and if you go up from the bottom you get the word spear, and you get Shakespeare.
Well, that actually kind of plays into I know this is totally off topic, but like this actually kind of plays into like the original vibe of like the Bible. Because like the original writing, the original like Hebrew or whatever language it is, I'm pretty sure it's Hebrew, is like it's full of puns. Like every single line is basically a pun, and a lot of that is gone in basically any English translation.
Yeah, well, with regards to the original language, it really depends if you're talking about the Old or the New Testament. A lot of the Old Testament is in Hebrew, but a lot of the New Testament is in like a variety of languages, like Greek.
Yeah. Yeah, a lot of the Old Testament is like just wordplay and puns. Like, yeah.
Anyway, we got on this topic because I made a reference to this website that allows you to quote things from the Marvel movies by giving you like the name of the movie and then the runtime position. So it would be like 1 Avengers 4:17 or something.
Oh my God.
I'll put that in the show notes too. But it kind of feels like that's what we're doing with the Prisoner, like the General 23:16.
Yeah. Anyway, number 6 starts snooping around the facility, and he goes into a room full of like busts that are covered by cloths.
Yeah, and he kind of confronts Madame Professor, and she asks, "Are you a spy?" And he just dodges the question and asks her another question. So I was like, "Barbara confirmed."
Yeah, he pulls off the coverings from the sculptures, and as someone whose profession is cutting hair, he is aghast at the solid forms and immobile structures of the carved version of people's hair.
Well, he suspects there's a visage of the General in there somewhere.
Yeah, one of the sculptures is him, though. So he's like, whoa, maybe I'm the General, and I just don't know it.
Wouldn't that be a twist?
Apparently one of these sculptures is Leo McKern's sculpture from episode 2.
Yeah, from Chimes of Big Ben.
Yeah.
I read that too. Which is wild, and would imply this would take place after Chimes of Big Ben, which it does in broadcast order. But I wonder if people use that to like place those 2 episodes in their own personal orders.
Yeah, I don't know. Well, it doesn't necessarily have to. Like, it could just be that number 2, but he's not number 2 yet. I don't know. But it also plays into, like, the 2 timelines thing that we were talking about before, of, like, there's actually, like, 2 concurrent timelines going on somehow at the same time. One, how it's broadcast, and one, how it, like, actually is within the show.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, number 2 actually shows up. And there's another indication here that this number 2 and number 6 like knew each other before any of this went down and were perhaps even friends.
Yeah, because he specifically says 6 and I are old friends.
Yeah.
Which kind of plays into my theory in A, B, and C that the reason why he was getting so like amped up at the end was because he knew number 6 was going to meet with him. Which at this point I've just accepted as my own personal headcanon.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, it fits.
I mean, there's like... One of the things I actually do like about this show is that there's just enough ambiguity about things that you can fit nearly anything to it. There's like there are a lot of things that are very straightforward, but there's just enough ambiguity that it leaves room for like all these theories. And I think this is one of the few shows that really like rides that ambiguity line pretty much perfectly without being too ambiguous or too... What would the opposite of ambiguous be?
Concrete.
Certain. Concrete, yeah. Concrete. Concrete's a good term.
Yeah, it's definitely, it's ambiguous, but it's not ambiguous in the way like Sapphire and Steel was of like, why are they wandering around this like, you know, like what are they even saying? Like the plots I think are pretty understandable, but like there's so many little things that leave like the door open for all these different theories, all these different things that you can think of, I guess. Which is cool. I mean, that's really cool that they're able to pull something like that off. Because, like, on the one hand, like this episode, for example, it's like it's all very concrete what they're doing. Number 6 is looking for the general. The professor has tried to escape, but he's unable to. And even the premise of the show is a pretty simple and concrete thing. Like, this guy resigned, and they're trying to find out why, and he's trying to escape.
Yep.
But yeah, just goes so many different weird places.
This episode actually like really throws a wrench into that like whole premise later on when like number 2 reveals that there's a dissident group within the village that like he thinks number 6 is a part of.
I don't even remember.
Not like a huge wrench, but a twist, I should say, I guess.
Yeah, I don't even like really know what you're talking. So like, I don't know. It doesn't seem to be like too big of a thing.
I just thought it was interesting because later on when number 2 literally has number 6 at his mercy and could ask him anything he wants, he doesn't ask why he resigned. He asks about the dissident group in the village, which I found very interesting.
Oh yeah, at the end
Maybe,
there when they're... Oh yeah, okay. I know what you're talking about now.
Yeah, at the end.
Anyway, it appears that the professor is like resting in the next room. Number 6 goes and like smashes his face in and he's like, see? Fake. He turns back and it's the professor's bloodied, smashed in face with his brains.
I was going to say, number 6, there is like no indication that before number 6 does this, he knows that this is like a clay or porcelain replica of the professor, right? Like he just goes for it. Like, he's really confident.
Well, you get like the idea that he somehow knows. We don't know how he does, but maybe he just has a feeling or whatever. But like, yeah, it would be funny if he was just like wrong and just ended up killing the professor.
Or at least giving him a concussion of some sort.
Yeah. And then on his way out, he tosses the tape to number 2 as just an even bigger slap in the face.
Yeah, because number 2's like, hey, you know that deal? To anybody who found the tape would get to leave? Yeah, it's off. And he's like, well, I guess I don't need this then.
Yeah.
Which like kind of made me wonder if number 6 ever really wanted to leave. Like he could have like taken his opportunity there.
He's just bitter that he's tried and failed so many times that he doesn't want the tape to potentially get into anyone else's hands and they might succeed. So he's keeping it for himself.
But he could do it himself. He could leave. He could leave. He could leave.
But he just wants to deprive other people like he's been deprived.
So he really is playing his role as number 6, the man who tries to escape. Interesting. Every week I do also like buy more into this theory that the numbers are jobs. Like, because that would actually really like explain... You could explain how number 12 has been here for years in this episode, but this episode still takes place after Schizoid Man because maybe he had a different number before this. And now because... This week, he is the man who is trying to break number 6, he gets assigned the number of number 12, like the fake number 6 did last week. Like, this theory, it fits so many pieces.
Yeah, is he like really? That's what I've always questioned. Is like, well, I say always, like I've done it since like the beginning of time or something. But like, that's what I've questioned. Is like, I don't know like what number 12's game is in this episode whatsoever.
I got the sense that he was in on that he set number 6 up. Like I got the sense that he set number 6 up.
Yeah, so I get that sense too, but I don't know if that was... I don't know if he had his own agenda where he was like actually trying to help number 6 and using that as a cover, you know?
Maybe he's part of the dissident group and he set number 6 up because it would draw the heat off them.
Yeah, maybe that it's very... I mean, obviously it's very heavily hinted that he's part of this group, but to what end, for what purpose, like we don't really know, I guess.
So number 6 is at home and he kind of goes to turn the lamp on and it just kind of explodes in his hand and he's like, yo, what the heck? And then number 12 shows up with a worker, and the worker has to go, number 251, has to go outside to order the replacement part, and number 12 basically tells number 6 that he's got the original message that the professor wanted to send out, and if number 6 wanted it to go out, he just needed to go send it off tomorrow, basically, and to meet him. And then right as he's about to tell number 6 where, the electrician comes back, so he kind of covertly says, oh yeah, you're going to have to pay the fine for breaking this lamp, so come to my office tomorrow morning. Number 6 is like, I see.
So then number 6 does that. He enters the facility, the broadcast facility, undercover in like a top hat and a coat and glasses.
Yeah, and somehow he's acquired the number badge for number 56.
Yeah,
Don't know where he got that from.
Yeah, probably just stole it off someone. Like he kind of later on, he like really hilariously knocks out some people.
You know, I have to wonder like how big of a problem identity theft is in the village, where you can just like swipe someone's number badge and like, well, you're that number now.
There's at least some recognition based on face, because they do recognize number 6 later on, or just in a minute actually.
Yeah.
But yeah, I love how hilarious this scene that happens right now is, because the way you get into the little broadcast thing or the conference or whatever is like we mentioned before, they have these like little coins, and like a Dr. Seuss-esque hand kind of just takes it, or like you put it in a slot and like a little gloved hand kind of just comes out of a machine and takes the coin.
Yeah, it's kind of like the machines you mentioned earlier that like you push the button and then a hand comes out of the box and pushes the button back.
Yeah.
You know, you flip a switch and then the hand just comes out of the box and flips the switch back, and that's the whole purpose of the box.
Yeah. Number 6 tries to see what happens if you try and cross the threshold thing without putting the coin in, and it just like zaps you and gives an announcement that the next one's going to be fatal.
I was going to say there's this hilarious scene when everybody's in and they're like getting ready to broadcast, so they're checking if everybody's okay. And this is actually right after number 6 gets in to the projection room, because he knocks some guys out and then he gets into the projection room so he can broadcast his message. But there's this hilarious scene where they're all sitting around this table and like, all right, let's check if everybody's okay. And they start flipping between everything. They're like, Professor. And he like gives a cheesy thumbs up to the camera, and then it like pans over to the camera guy and it's like, camera guy. And he turns to the left and gives a thumbs up. And then it cuts to like information room, and then the guy turns to the camera and gives a thumbs up. And I was like, wow, it's like a really cheesy sitcom intro. Everybody's giving like a thumbs up to the camera.
Well, then they call number 6 in the broadcast room, and he does like the whole Han Solo thing where he's like, yeah, everything's okay here. Nothing to worry about. Don't send anyone. We're good.
Yeah, it works until they decide. It's actually, you know, good on them for having this visual security system and checking before every broadcast, because they check the projection room and number 6 is just totally zoned out, like looking through the projection device, and they're like, projection room. And number 2 is like, hang on a minute, that's number 6.
The look on number 2's face when he sees number 6 is priceless.
So So they knock number 6 out in a suitably hilarious fashion in the same way he knocked everybody else out by just like banging them on the back of his head. He also like scratches his hand. Or the projectionist scratches his hand, I think.
Yeah.
With what does he scratch his hand with?
I don't know, something sharp. So for the rest of the episode, though, he's in a cast.
Yeah.
Which I say rest of the episode, but it's really like, what, 7 or 8 more minutes, something like that.
This is about 10 minutes.
They bring number 6 into the room that
council
is
room.
Yeah, the council room. But the room that's soon revealed to be where the general is.
Well, they take him to the council room to interrogate him first. And that's when they interrogate him about the dissidents instead of being like, why did you resign? This council room is another obvious redress of the control room set. Just saying.
Yeah. Yeah. Once you notice that, like...
Yeah.
It's really hard not to notice it.
Now that Keith's pointed it out, I notice it every week. I'm like, hey, there's the control room set. But yeah, now they, like you said, they take him to the room where the general is allegedly stored. I shouldn't say stored because that gives away what the general is. Where the general is... They open the room and my first note is the professor is the general. And then the professor like feeds something into a machine. I'm like, the general is a microwave? And then I was like, man, that'd be really funny if the general was just like the microwave they make their food in, like when they're broadcasting. And the professor wrote this long lecture about how they should destroy the general, and it's actually like just because like microwaving food is bad or something.
Yeah.
But then the wall opens up.
Yeah, there's a little discussion here. I wrote some interesting stuff down from it because there are a few like little tidbits. Number 2, I believe, says something along the lines of like, who cares like what's actually going on? It's the image that's important. I think he says that in response to like to number 6 saying like speed learn isn't like it doesn't teach you properly or something, and I think number 2 says like, well, who cares? Like it makes it look like you know a lot, so it doesn't matter. Or something like that. I wish I wrote the full thing down, but I can't remember. Someone also mentions crop spraying as like one of the subjects that they like learn. It was like from math to like biochemistry to history to crop spraying. I think that's what he says. I couldn't make it out clearly.
Well, they do probably need to grow their own food in the village, right? Because otherwise there'd be a method of escape through the food influx.
I guess. But yeah, then you know the wall opens and it's like that Twilight Zone episode, and it's a computer.
Yeah, it apparently literally is like that Twilight Zone episode.
Yeah, have you seen that Twilight Zone?
No, I have not. I just saw it referenced in one of the blogs I was looking at, I think.
Yeah, there's a pretty famous Twilight Zone episode where it's like, I've watched it, but I don't remember it very well. If I remember correctly, it's like some post-apocalyptic like world that not too many people are left alive in, and leaving all the decisions to like a computer that's hidden inside a cave or something.
I mean, it's such like a sci-fi trope now. Philip K. Dick even did it once, and I don't remember the name of the story now, but like they bring a supercomputer online and it decides like the only way to save humanity is like to destroy it, and then it's like the Terminator movies, and then even like Captain America did this halfway through the movie where they've been like, there's this virus that's like adapting to what they try to throw at it, and there's this mysterious person who's been calling all the shots, and then they go to this facility and they find out the virus and the person are the same thing because it's an AI, it's a computer, right? Like classic sci-fi trope now.
Yeah, I'm sure the Twilight Zone wasn't the first thing to do it. It's just, I think, the early, like a very early and probably the most famous example of it.
Mm-hmm. So number 6 is like, well, can I ask it a question? Because number 2 suspects number 12 is the one who let number 6 in. But number 6 wants to ask the machine a different question. So he writes out the question and he feeds the paper in. And
you're forgetting the most important part of the episode where number 2 originally is like, hell no, I'm not going to let you ask it a question. And number 6 goes like, "What, are you chicken?" And number 2 is like, "Fine, fine then. Ask it. See if I care."
Well, so number 6 feeds in the question, which you can actually, if you pay attention on the Blu-ray transfer, HD transfer, you can read it on the paper, and that kind of like ruins the reveal actually a little bit. So that's cool.
Yeah, I'm sure that they probably never planned for you to be able to read it. One, because probably a lot of people would be watching this in black and white. And 2, like even if you were watching color, there's no way it would be clear enough to see it.
Yeah, they couldn't have imagined that you could rescan film at a higher resolution later on.
But
and
the question is, why?
Why?
Yeah, I was gonna make some joke about it, but I couldn't think of one fast enough. So, yeah, it's why. Which just plays into like the whole memorization thing, right? The general is able to, or speed learn is able to teach you a lot of facts like really fast, but it doesn't put those in any kind of context. It's just rote memorization.
Yeah.
So you might know from having done a podcast that The Prisoner was recorded in 1966 and was first aired in 1967 and has 5 different broadcast orders and across 5 different stations, but you don't know why. Like, we're not really getting at the heart of the matter.
I suppose. So
but yeah, another
the professor gets electrocuted,
yeah.
12 gets electrocuted.
Yeah, because the general starts like overheating, and there's like a little dial that doesn't have like, it just says like one side is normal and the other side is danger.
It is labeled in units of microamps, which is like a really, really, really small current. I'm gonna throw my physics knowledge in here for once, but that's like a really, really small current.
Huh.
Like well below what would be needed to kill you. Just saying.
Huh.
Because it's not the voltage that kills you, it's the amperage.
Huh. Okay. Then.
Anyway,
Yeah.
they all die. Except for number 2 and number 6.
Yeah. Number 6 has his little mic drop where he reveals what the question was and then walks out. And
Number 2 looks suitably frazzled.
yeah, and then it ends with the same like bars closing in on number 6 that it always does. So like after this pretty big victory compared to all the other weeks, it's like, haha, nope.
Yeah, I mean, victory compared to the other weeks, but I think it's a Pyrrhic victory at best. Largely because I point to the line where Madame Professor's like, creation arises from destruction. Yeah, the general was something that the overseers of the village were using to control their population, kind of, but again, like we've said and mostly you've said throughout this, it's just rote memorization, so in a way it's actually not really that effective, and by destroying it, number 6 actually just opens the path for more totalitarian methods to be used, because why are they going to go back to something that is so easily destroyed? They'll just go for something even tougher next time. Like it's number 6 may feel like it's a victory, but consider, like, if you do consider that A, B, and C to take place after this, do you really think number 2 would have been so desperate to invade number 6's dreams and break his mind while he's sleeping if number 6 hadn't destroyed the general? I would say, probably not.
No, plus it just opens the door of like, hey, we just learned that this machine can't process a question why. Maybe we should build another one that can, type thing.
Yeah, exactly. Like, maybe we'll build a more powerful general. Again, the idea of creation arising from destruction, that by destroying it, you actually make it stronger because you can create something newer and even better out of it.
Yeah, no escape. The prisoner.
That's my bearing on whether it's a victory or not. It's a victory, but a Pyrrhic one at best.
Yeah. Now that we discuss it, maybe like what this show is all about, or one of the many things it's about, is like how we're all just prisoners to technology, and even if you try and go back to like, even if you try and live like without, you know, like using tech like Amish people do or whatever, you know, you're still, it's like you can never really escape. You're either gonna get pulled back into it, or like you're gonna play into like it being used somehow. I don't know.
Yeah, technology is so omnipresent that even if you think you can escape it in this weird random village, you don't, right? Like, and even when you think you've destroyed it,
Yeah.
you really haven't. Because that's the thing. I mean, they still have their like massive surveillance infrastructure. Like, yeah, you destroyed the general, which like was doing speed learn, but they can still spy on you while you sleep. So
Yeah. Plus, they can still use speed learn. They just have to rebuild the general. Like, that part of it wasn't really flawed.
well, also the general didn't even like control the speed learn, right? Because the projection room was the thing that sent it out, and they've still got that. They can still send out speed learn lessons. The general was just the one who built the lessons.
I guess.
So like,
and plus, like when you think about it, speed learn isn't even like that bad. It's actually like there's actually tons and tons of benefits to speed learn, because like part of school is it shouldn't be all of like, you know, school and stuff, but like part of it is just the memorization aspect. So like that could help.
well, I think there's like an implication or like some line somewhere that someone says that they're going to be using it to like brainwash
Oh, was there?
the
villagers.
the villagers. But then again, like that goes back to the like, is it really effective for that purpose? Because it's just rote memorization. Like, how are you going to brainwash them? They're going to like memorize the fact that the village is like great or something, or like make America
Make the
great. I don't
village
know.
great again. God.
But yeah, but that's the thing though, is that we forgot this weird Halloween scene where this reporter's just going around asking people random history questions. But all it does is give them the ability to regurgitate information when they're asked questions. So I wonder how they would use this for brainwashing purposes.
Maybe it has something to do, because like there's that scene we skipped where number 12 asks number 6 like what something was, and number 6 gave a date as an answer. So maybe it kind of like skews your mind into giving the information that you're given, instead of like really thinking out the answer for yourself.
Perhaps, but I mean, again, the destruction of the general leads to even more oppressive like mind control techniques, like the fake number 6 last week and the like dream invasion of A, B, and C. So they're going to achieve their brainwashing some way, and number 6's destruction of the general has just hastened its onset, really.
Yeah.
The treadmill of the village.
Yeah. Anyway, one thing I kind of wanted to touch on here at the end is just how much I realized I liked this number 2 this time around. I never really cared for this one in particular. I always thought Leo McKern's number 2 was my favorite, and I still think that, but I don't know. I think this number 2 is also really good this time around.
I do really enjoy this number 2. Like, quite a bit. I really like his performance. There is that kind of ambiguity / subtlety of whether or not he knows number 6 before, and I like that addition to his portrayal. He also is, especially in this episode, the most kind of assured number 2 of his success, although obviously that potentially that hubris leads to his downfall, but I do enjoy it.
Yeah, Colin Gordon. There you go. A great number 2, if there ever was one.
And there are many.
I also think that this episode is better after Schizoid Man. Regardless, just taking A, B, and C out of the equation for a second, you know, I think the order that, or I guess taking it out of the equation though, like I think the order that we were shown these in, A, B, and C, Schizoid Man, and then the General, like is yeah,
With free for all sprinkled in there.
yeah, is probably, I don't know. I want to say it's the best because again, it's the only one I've watched them in. But like, I think it really works because first you get this, you kind of get the end of the quote unquote trilogy with like Colin Gordon's number 6 failing and
Number 2.
yeah, number 2 failing and probably facing the consequences of that. And then you get a little hint about the general and you kind of wonder what that's all about. And then you get this episode that very clearly brings the two together. So you kind of know going in that this number 2 failed because of something to do with the general. Mm-hmm. So I think that kind of works in that way.
Yeah, I think so. It's interesting that the schizoid man seems to portray the general as having more control over the village than what the general actually has in this episode. Since it seems, and last week I mean, just look at the fact that I thought the general might be number 1 last week because it seemed like the general last week had come up with the entire plan of the schizoid man, whereas in this episode, the general that were presented doesn't seem like it would be able to, or it doesn't seem created for that purpose to come up with a plan like that, right? So that's kind of interesting. Perhaps the general is, perhaps Schizoid Man takes place after this and the general is rebuilt in a more powerful form, but again, that doesn't explain why number 6 doesn't know what the general is in that one.
Yeah, I don't know.
Although, again, like, are we just assuming number 6 doesn't know who the general is because he makes the mistake of saying he's going to report directly to the general? He could still make that mistake after knowing what the general is, right? There's nothing that says he couldn't make that mistake after knowing what the general is.
I guess it's just like a lot less likely, like, and especially him being flustered when number 2 corrects him. But yeah, I guess. But,
he could also make that mistake because he thinks the general is destroyed, and number 2 indicating that it's not is maybe why he's getting flustered because he's like, wait, what?
Yeah, I have no idea. I guess it could be the case.
I don't know. I think I'm still buying into the theory that this like simulation resets every week.
We'll have to see.
I'm ready for Fallout to just wreck all of my theories. Like a wrecking ball. Well, who is number 1 this week? I actually really struggled with this one. I'm going to be honest. Because I didn't really see any character as having like the knowledge or foresight to be number 1 this week. Except maybe Madame Professor is the one who I'm throwing out mostly as a wildcard pick, but also because it's like she does seem to be somewhat knowledgeable about something that she's not giving away. She's holding something close to her chest.
Yeah, she does give off that vibe. I had a pretty difficult time choosing one this week too. I guess in the end I wrote down 12 maybe.
I could see that as well.
Yeah, he seems like he's playing both sides. Again, I've never really understood what his game was, what he was really trying to do in all of this. So he still has that mystery about him.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, very interesting. The introduction of the dissident group is another thing that I wonder if is ever going to come up again, or if it's just like, world building seasoning.
Yeah, I don't even know the answer to that because I don't remember.
Well, guess we'll find out together.
Yeah, we're approaching. I remember the first half of the show a lot better than I remember the second half because I think the first 8 or 9 episodes is a lot better than I basically think the first half of the show is better than the second half. Although I do think Fallout is amazing. But yeah, I think we're in the best part of this show right now.
Animax Zone re-ranked all the episodes in 2017 for the 50th anniversary and put The General at number 14 out of 17, just saying it was pretty bad, silliest ending, ludicrous sign-off.
Yeah, that's an exaggeration. I do think that this is the weakest of the 6 we've watched so far.
I would say so. I would say so. But I actually do think it's the resolution that brings it down. Because I actually thought it was like really interesting and really strong with Speed Learn and the mysterious general and the professor, and like 6 breaks in to transmit this message to destroy the general. But once, basically, ironically enough, it was revealed that the general's a computer, which, you know, on paper is a really cool idea. Like, the execution of it in this episode just kind of made it seem like, oh, well, that's kind of lame, actually.
Yeah, the reveal is kind of lame. Like, they unveil it, and, like, there's this worker, like, working on it, and it's just there. And they're like, there it is. That's the general.
And, like, maybe that's because it's become such a trope.
Yeah.
Now, maybe it's just because I feel like it doesn't really gel with the rest of the episode, because there's no indication at all that the general's going to be not like a person. And even in the Schizoid Man, like, there's no indication that the general's going to be a computer at any point. There's no even indication that the professor built the general, or the professor is like involved in this, especially since the professor tries to escape at the beginning of the episode, allegedly, at least based on my recollection of the events. So I guess to me, just some of the plot elements don't necessarily jive, and that's why it is the weakest of the 6 we've watched so far.
Yeah, and you know, thinking back, I probably would rank this close to where Interact Zone had it, somewhere near the bottom of the list overall. I don't think it's bad at all, because I don't think any episode of The Prisoner is bad, but there are definitely stronger ones and weaker ones, and I think this is on the lower side.
Yeah, I mean, just because it's the worst of the episodes doesn't mean it's bad, right? Like, it's...
No.
Well, I'm pretty much ready to go on to Britain's 10 actors and then to emails, unless you have something else you'd like to talk about.
Nope. I'm ready to go on to those as well, to the extent that I can be, having barely looked up any actors for this week.
There aren't many, because we've already talked about number 2, who is, like, again, always the big one every week, and we've already talked about Colin Gordon's number 2. Is this the first number 2 we've had that recurred in an episode?
Think so, yeah.
I mean, Leo McKern's will reoccur.
Yep.
Right? But I think this is the first 2 to actually reoccurred, so...
Yeah.
Without number 2 to bolster our Britain's 10 actors, we're left with slim pickings, so to speak.
Well, we have... I'll just start now, even though I'm literally looking this up as we speak. We have John Castle as number 12.
Mm-hmm.
He has been in a lot. Has almost 100 acting roles, over 100 if you count him acting as himself. And yeah, just going through his IMDb here. Let's see, was he in Danger Man? I don't think so. No, he wasn't. I mean, he's been in a lot of stuff. I'm not seeing anything I particularly recognize or that looks super big. A lot
Casualty
of, like,
and Inspector Morse, I have.
Yeah.
As the 2 that I recognized, but otherwise, yeah, pretty much stuff I didn't recognize.
Yeah, the New Avengers, he was in that.
And also RoboCop 3, apparently.
Poirot, 1 episode. Casualty. Yeah, just a lot of stuff.
Yep. Well, so then next we've got Peter Howell as the professor. He was in Poirot, Yes Minister, but not Yes Prime Minister. He was an investigator in The Mutants on Doctor Who.
Yeah.
He was in Softly Softly Task Force. He was in The Avengers as well. And that's what I had for him.
Yeah, and then we have Betty Mcdowell, I guess is how you pronounce her name, as Madam Professor. She has also been in quite a number of things. Again, like I mentioned before, she was in something. Hold on, I'm about to find it. Where she was credited as Mrs. Sargent, which I know Sargent can be a last name, but it was just weird here, like, that she had that, like, last name that was a title, and here she's referred to as Madam Professor.
Mm-hmm.
So that was kind of cool. She played an uncredited drug addict in 1957's Pickup Alley.
Well, then I have Al Mancini, the announcer. He was in UFO, the movie The Dirty Dozen, Department S, which is something I recognized, but don't really know what it's about, and that's kind of all that I recognized him for. That's pretty much it.
Yeah, pretty much.
Except for I found in a really weird meta twist, and that'll make sense in a second, I found our actor for the week who died suspiciously close to the airing of this. But one of the men in top hats in the council died January 1st, 1969. And his name, if you can believe it, was Ian Fleming.
Oh my god.
Not to be confused with Ian Fleming, who created James Bond. This is a completely separate man who, by chance, was also named Ian Fleming.
God.
And he was apparently very well known for acting as Dr. Watson in a couple of Sherlock Holmes movies in the 30s. And was a big stage actor before that.
Wow. Yeah. I can't believe that there's been, I think in 5 out of the 6 that we've watched, there was someone who died within 2 or 3 years max.
Mm-hmm.
Man.
Mm-hmm.
What did they know? What did they find out during the making of this show?
Well, most of them have been old. Ian Fleming was 80.
What if there's an actual village for people who found out too much about the making of The Prisoner? What if we stumble upon some top secret info in our research and get abducted?
Well, people will know because the podcast will just stop going out and they'll be like, wonder what happened to Dylan and Keon.
You know what we should do is just not put this podcast out for a month just to do that as a meta joke.
I mean, we do take hiatuses between seasons, so.
Well, supposedly.
Supposedly.
We've only done that once. Out of 4 opportunities to do it? Or no?
We're doing it
3.
after this, so.
Yeah, we're doing it after this. Supposedly.
We are. I've decided it.
Well, that's all I have for this entire episode.
That's all I've got, too. But anyway, Sergeant Drainer, we return to the email with the Schizoid Man, another great one. This time, number 6 gets a clone in the form of number 12. It's interesting, though, that he's not just a clone. We get a full name for this guy, Charles Curtis. He has a life until Rover gets him. He has a dead wife, Susan. Did he always look like number 6? Was he surgically altered or what? When number 6 finally kicks his ass, for some reason I find it hilarious that number 6 furiously rips his mole off of Curtis and sticks it back on his own arm. Does he keep wearing that glued-on mole for the rest of the series? For some reason I also found this exchange hilarious. 2, you bring 2 great gifts to bear, number 6, which are, number 2, well, firstly, there's your ability as an agent. Number 6, yes. Secondly, number 2, secondly, you have a unique physical advantage. Number 6, unique physical advantage of growing a mustache overnight. This is one of the few episodes that has a date given with it seen on the calendar during number 6's brainwashing flashback. For this reason, this episode should probably immediately precede Many Happy Returns, which also has a date given in it. To close, I just wanted to say a few words about Patrick McGowan's incredible performance in this show, which to my mind is unlike anything he has done in anything else. There's something about the way number 6 moves, like he's a coiled spring that could explode at any moment. It's hard to take your eyes off him. On a related note, it's not sci-fi, but Danger Man is a great show as well. Really impressive, really thought-provoking, with some excellent, incredible, efficient writing in it. Somehow they squeeze a whole Bond movie into 30 minutes or later an hour, without it feeling rushed, without feeling like it's missing anything. The show also feels very authentic. It's true Drake doesn't carry a gun, but when you think about it, that makes a lot of sense. Drake is a secret agent, often infiltrating foreign countries where he's not supposed to be, and where he certainly would not be allowed to carry a firearm, unless he's in the great state of America. To risk carrying one is to risk getting exposed and arrested the instant it is discovered. Real secret agents in enemy territory don't carry guns or do things that would draw attention to themselves. The whole point is that they remain essentially invisible, unnoticed. A couple of episodes worth watching are, quote, Yesterday's Enemies, unquote, which could be one of several episodes depicting events that caused Number 6 to resign, and, quote, Colony 3, unquote, which feels like a prototype episode for The Village. Keep up the great work, guys. I know this is a long one, but hopefully I gave you some good stuff to talk about. Well, I don't think the date means anything, because actually in this episode, multiple days pass and the date remains the same. I think the date in this episode is actually given only as a method of breaking 6 further. It's not actually given as the actual date this episode takes place on, necessarily.
Yeah, and I can't remember, but, apparently, according to, the email, Many Happy Returns has a date given in it. So maybe that's, like, directly after February or whatever it was.
Yeah, because Schizoid Man is February 17th, I believe. It was. Yeah. Except, like, they kidnap Number 6 and brainwash him for, like, months. So...
Yeah, I honestly, I barely remember Many Happy Returns. I remember...
I guess you'll have the experience of watching it for the first time, for the third time.
I remember the premise of it, which is unlike any other episode. And it's a good premise, but I don't remember exactly how it plays out.
It's a good premise.
They're actually, I remember the ending really well. I remember the first half of the show pretty well. But, like, some episodes in the middle there, like episode 13, 14... Like, I don't really remember all that well. The last 4 episodes are very, very distinct, though.
Yeah, that's probably because, again, he was, and by he, I mean Patrick McGoohan, was asked to, like, drag the show out to 17 episodes, so probably I'm not surprised that the ones that drag are the ones later on.
Mm-hmm.
So, let's see, in terms of McGoohan's performance, I do agree that he does give a really good performance. He is one of the best actors in this show. I mean, he is the best actor in the show. I'm just going to say that so far. Some of the number 2 so far has come pretty close, but the fact that McGoohan has to keep doing this every week is really impressive. And part of the reason why his performance may be so good is because he's the one secretly directing a lot of these episodes, so he can really do whatever he wants.
Yeah. It's him and Leo McKern we're going to see are really the biggest stars of this show.
Mm-hmm. Also, I'm going to potentially disagree with the fact that spies don't carry firearms. I seem to remember that people make fun of Bond for, like, carrying a firearm, but I seem to remember that Fleming took care to, like, write that in as something that he actually experienced, because, again, Fleming was actually a spy. He was a secret agent. He was part of MI6. And as far as I know, it is documented that MI6 agents did carry guns. But I might be wrong. I'll put it in the show notes. But I seem to remember there being, like, a documented thing that they did carry firearms with them.
Mm-hmm.
But, I mean, there is a distinction to be made between, like, whether you're just a spy or whether you're actually going undercover or not. And if you're going undercover, you might still carry a firearm. It just might be a firearm of the nation or the group or the organization that you're going undercover with. So I don't think it's necessarily accurate to make a blanket statement that spies wouldn't carry guns. I mean, the FBI and the CIA carry guns. That I know for sure. Sure.
Yeah, or, maybe you're the type of spy that just carries a Glock around openly.
Your complimentary Desert Eagle. It's well documented that when you become a spy in America, they shake your hand, they slap a Desert Eagle in your hand, and they go, all right, make sure you use this responsibly. Then they give you a pack of ammo, and they say, if you need more, just call me. Anyway, thank you for emailing us. Sergeant Drano, looking forward to see if you have anything to say about the General. I hope to hear from you soon.
Ditto.
Anyway, if there's anyone who would like to email us here at Decorative Vegetable Headquarters, you can reach us at thedoctor@decorativevegetable.com. Questions, comments, concerns, angry rants, love letters, your thoughts on the General. We should change our email to thegeneral@decorativevegetable.com. Just for this podcast.
God.
That would be confusing. You can find us on YouTube at Decorative Vegetable and find us on Apple Podcasts, Google Play, and Spotify, all at Inevitable, a classic sci-fi podcast. Be sure to leave a rating if you like the show.
Check us out on Facebook, Trust Your Doctor. Like us on Facebook, check us out on Twitter at TYD Podcast, and follow us on Twitter. And next time, we're going to be watching Many Happy Returns. But until then, the end.